Celtics Beat, brought to you by PrizePicks.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome in a new edition of Celtics Beat. I'd like to very quickly tell you before we get started, of course, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the official daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play your first lineup for only $5. I am Adam Kaufman. Evan Valenti is here. We're always here, and we are thrilled, as we always are, to be joined by the longtime voice of the Celtics, Sean Grande. And Sean, I feel like I'm inching. I'm just like, it's like walking into an ocean, right? I'm just like one slow step at a time, not ready for the plunge into this conversation because we know that there's a lot of negativity surrounding the Boston Celtics right now. And I think it's great that you are here from a timing standpoint in terms of being able to help us out with some historical context to what we are seeing, but also to steal from Fox, right? A little fair and balanced conversation. Here is where I want to start for all the people out there. I'd like to remind you, Celtics fans who may be unaware. So Basketball Reference doesn't go all the way back through NBA history in this regard. It goes back to, I think, the early 80s, maybe 84, something like that, when you start to get into the what's a team's record after dropping the first two games at home of a best-of-7 playoff series. It will tell you 4-24. One of those wins, the Celtics, back in 2017, dropped two games to the Rajon Rondo-led Chicago Bulls by, I think it was 14 points and 4 points. And then the Celtics reel off four straight wins and win those games by an average of 15 points, 16 points, whatever it was. They correct all of the things that at the time, a series that I'm sure, Sean, you remember quite well, just didn't make sense. Well, here we are, all these years later, almost a decade, looking at a Celtics-Knicks series that if you listened to Celtics Beat last week, you know we weren't taken seriously. A lot of Celtics fans coming in were not taking it seriously. And really, it has taken history to even put us where we are, which is the Knicks, who trailed by 20 points in each of these first two games, in front 2-0, despite leading for a grand total of, I don't even know, 20% of these games in totality. And now heading back to the Mecca, going to Madison Square Garden, where Boston is still, in the odds, the eyes of the odds makers, still a slight favorite to win this series, which is remarkable and yet understandable for ways I could get into a little bit later if people want me to. But what I want to know from you, just to start us off, how are we feeling about Boston's ability to overcome what some classify as shooting variance and win this series?
Well, first of all, they weren't led by Rondo because Rondo got hurt, and that's why the Bulls claimed that they lost the series. The same way Jimmy Butler said, well, we would have won the series when they lost by like 1 million last year, but they would have won the series if Jimmy Butler had played. An extraordinary time, right? Right now, at this exact time, before Game 3 begins, and you're listening back to this or watching this back a week from now, when we know if the Celtics title reign ended like all the other champions of the last few years in the second round, or if somehow they pulled this off and they've gone on to greater glory. But it is an amazing time in which hot take theater has reached its zenith, in the last couple of days. And you knew it was coming. I was doing this conversation in this interview a lot last year as the Knicks were inching towards beating the Pacers, and we were headed for the first Knicks-Celtics conference final in 50 years, that it was going to be a 2-week Stephen A-a-thon, and I am here for it because it's going to be glorious. And yet, we're in the most bizarre 0-2 hole, because when the Celtics lost 2 games to Chicago, remember Isaiah Thomas had been hurt. He had just lost his sister. He had flown back across before that series. Every series has its own thing. One of the series, by the way, was the Celtics winning the first 2 in Orlando in 2010 in the conference finals, and eventually going up 3-0, in that series before that one got pushed to 6. So, but we've just witnessed the hardest thing I'm asked to do in play-by-play. And you know this, Adam, from doing games. The hardest thing in play-by-play is to describe something that you can't possibly have fathomed before happening, when it's your job to prepare for every single scenario. But this is simply amazing. And here we are 2 days later trying to figure out, I don't know, while 99% of people try to figure out how the Celtics have lost these games by a single point and not going into overtime the first game, I can't believe they played as poorly as they have and had 20-point leads in the 2 games. That is amazing to me. But there shouldn't be a ton to feel good about. I know this falling back on the road thing. We got to put the road. I know we're jumping into a lot of stuff. Let's put the road thing aside by this. We have to accept that in the NBA, we're now the NHL. Okay? Home court advantage is not what it was. Yes, the Celtics are historically good on the road. Yes, they dominated at Madison Square Garden, and they are the best road team in NBA history the last 3.5 years. All those things are true. But losing 20-point leads and winning games on the road, this is happening all around the league right now. This is happening everywhere. This notion that the Celtics somehow blow leads, the Celtics were 46-1 this year when leading by 16. And the one loss in there was that big Cleveland lead that they had lost by the second quarter. So people, the Celtics always blow leads. This year's team doesn't at all. They had the one big lead in the first quarter against Cleveland. They lost in the second quarter. So people are just so wild and angry right now. And they should be at how disappointing it is. But here's the wild card you guys know. How long has it been since a New York fan could text a Boston fan or go after a Boston? It's been so long since a New York fan could go after a Boston fan on social media that there was no social media the last time a New York fan could go after. I mean, you're probably talking Eli Manning, right? But forget Aaron Boone and anything like that. So I just think everybody, certainly they were looking past it. And you can understand why with the 4 regular season games, but you needed to watch Detroit. And here's my overall take on the series, then we can jump into the specifics. The Knicks don't have depth. Great. It's the second round of the playoffs. Who cares who the 11th guy on the roster is? That's number one. So now you're talking about the Knicks 6 against the Celtics 6. Okay, you're still taking the Celtics 6. Now take Porzingis out of the mix. Is that not a close series between the Knicks 6 and the Celtics 6 without Porzingis? That sounds like a pretty tight series to me, especially the way the Knicks play in close games and the fact that this isn't the 08 Atlanta Hawks, who are a 36-win team. This was, with Brunson, the 4th or 5th best team in the NBA all year. So add all of that into this spicy cauldron and broth that is going to be spilling over. And thank God I have the job I have, because I could not afford to be in the building tomorrow in any other way.
So it sounds like Sean is telling us that, unlike what Mike Greenberg was telling us on ESPN earlier today, we are not maybe seeing the most improbable playoff run in NBA history, again, from a 3 seed that has won 6 total playoff games and is up 2-0 in the second round. This is it. I mean, you mentioned it, the hot take theater, Sean, and whether it's on a national level or even a local level, it's just, you're hearing everything right now from, again, people bending over backwards to praise the Knicks, people saying that, the debate between, I brought up shot variance on all these 3-pointers, Boston shooting 25% from 3 the first 2 games, and in each of the first 2 games at that, versus the arrogance of Joe Mazzulla and refusing to change his ways, and how dare he. And I was reading articles before we did the show about how Mazzulla should be fired if the Celtics lose this series. So again, it is like we're getting Dan Le Batard, Meadowlark, with the Jalen Brunson having his moment, and I caught, obviously some of your broadcasting encapsulates just this so well what we're seeing from the Knicks, like maybe the best 3-game run, at least postseason wise, in Knicks history, from the Brunson, game-winning 3, obviously, to cap that first-round series against the Pistons, and then these 2 20-point comebacks. Brunson, clutch player of the year and living up to all the hype and all of that. But did you know Jason Tatum sucks and has never had a postseason moment in his entire forget postseason. He's never had a moment in his life that people do remember. So
there's people you respect who have these takes, and you're like, wow. Dan Le Batard said, "Show me a moment Jason Tatum's had
ever in his life."
Are you? I mean, that's an insane take to have if you follow the NBA. But if you're trying to get aggregate, that, by the way, the job, when I talk about hot take theater, you know this because we've had this conversation. I love it as much as anybody, but it's still theater. Yeah. And there are guys that are awesome at it. Like we're in the golden age of hot take theater. The greatest to ever do it are currently doing it every day. So enjoy it. But again, what does it have to do with, and I'll put it to you this way so you have sort of a better understanding of it. Let's say one of the 51 open threes that the Celtics had, let's pick 2, any 2 you want. One goes in Monday, one goes in Wednesday, and the Celtics are up 2-0. all of the hot take theater would be, see, the Knicks, Thibodeau has to go, Tibbs has to go, and the Knicks can't beat an elite team. Look at how poorly the Celtics are playing, and the Knicks still can't beat them. This is a disgrace, and Leon Rose did a nice job, but 5 picks for Mikal Bridges, and this is why, as much fun as hot take theater is, you have to find a way to separate yourself from it and say, what is the real issue here? I try to do it in real time, and by the way, in real time, what struck me was this run in Knicks history is they've never won 5 in a row in the road in the playoffs, ever in 8 decades, and they just did it. To win the games the way they won these 5 road games by, I think, 8 or 9 points total. It's amazing. And again, I don't want to go, Bob Costas, old baseball stuff, but you talk about the greatest upset of all time. The 88 Dodgers, the Kirk Gibson team that hit the home run out Dennis Eckersley, they beat the 2 of the great teams of the decade, the 88 A's and the 88 Mets, right? But the Dodgers were like the 3rd or they had Oral Hershiser, and they were a 90-plus win team. They were a really good team. Were they expected to beat the Mets and A's? No. Just like the Knicks are not a 36-win team. This is not the greatest upset of all time. If they sweep the Celtics, sure. But what if they sweep them? What if the Knicks win the series in 5 games, and the 4 games they win are by a combined 6 or 7 points? How do we look at it that way? The Pirates won the World Series, right? Bill Mazeroski in 1960. And the Yankees clubbed them in 3 games, and the Pirates won 4 close games. Sometimes it happens. But, again, the clutch stuff is legit because the Celtics offense completely went south. The arguing about the 3-point shots, and I'm sure we'll get to it, is there a time and score that should make you change the way you want to play? Not that, of course, over 82 games, if you play the way the Celtics play, they're going to, at the cards are going to, you guys are gambling guys, the cards are going to come in your favor. The chips are going to come in your favor but it doesn't work in a 7-game series. So it's fair to ask these questions. But my immediate reaction, and I know the video went out or whatever when Max and I did our post game, I was disgusted by the final minutes of the 3rd quarter in game 2. That is where I thought the Celtics lost the game. They went 0 for 4 with 4 turnovers. There was a style and profile and what kind of dunk should I put the Knicks away with tonight moment that resulted in a unacceptable lost ball turnover. And then for all this Hacker Mitchell Robinson conversation, and why wouldn't you want the most efficient player who's dominating defensively off the floor? The 4th quarter one is, you can question it with Anunoby, fair. Late in the 3rd quarter, in a game that was decided by 1 point, the Celtics hacked him to get to the 14 fouls. And then with Mitchell Robinson standing right there and Porzingis standing next to him to commit the 5th foul to put him on the line when he had just had the worst free throw in NBA history, his previous time at the line, the Celtics do not foul there. How many points was Mitchell Robinson going to get at the free throw line if you had hacked him there? Maybe 1, maybe. And instead, that possession was an open 3 for Josh Hart. And you can win all the other margins, but that was a margin. Those margins at the end of the 3rd quarter, those points that were left on the board, and that sequence of not fouling Robinson and giving the 3 to Hart, that was the one that kind of drove me crazy because I was in no way, shape, or form surprised when that game got close because, listen, you mess around with the game, it will mess around with you.
One of the things, like just to piggyback on that for a second, I was registering because the way the Celtics have closed quarters recently has been poor. With a $1:43 left in the 3rd quarter, I thought the game flipped. And it was right there. I was like, I don't like the way this smells. I don't like the way this looks. And then all of a sudden, Knicks carried that right in the 4th quarter, and it's a game. I do want to speak in one more generality, though, before we get into really big specifics, because just trying to get a sense of what we're watching to go up 20 both games and then blow both. It sort of has that feeling of January, of like the January Celtics who couldn't get out of their own way, were kind of stuck in the mud, and needed that a little time off for the All-Star break to kind of recalibrate and then have an amazing March and then carry them into April and carry them into the playoffs. It feels a little bit, to me personally, Sean, like January. What does it feel like to you? Does this feel like earlier part of the season, or does this feel new?
I'm going to say it feels new, and the Porzingis thing is the issue here. That's what we're talking about here. The Celtics offense coming apart. There's a lot of reasons for it. And again, people, if you're a Knicks fan, you're saying, oh, they're just talking about missed shots. They're not talking about all the great things. This is this extraordinary run for the Knicks and the love they're going to feel when they take the floor tomorrow afternoon. It's going to feel old school, man. A weekend afternoon game. We just passed the 30th anniversary of Reggie, my guy getting the 8 points in 6 seconds or whatever it was. All these 90s, moments in these afternoon games, at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks, what they've done here has been extraordinary. They've taken the opportunity the Celtics have given them these games to take, and they have taken them. And there's this element of redemption here in New York for this team that I think was underappreciated all year because everybody fell in love with last year's Knicks team, with Hartenstein and with DiVincenzo. And that this year's team, and Mikal Bridges specifically, I thought became the poster for, well, this isn't as much fun as last year, and Karl Anthony Towns isn't that same kind of dog that we're used to having here. Hartenstein was, and all these things, even though he's outrageously skilled and is due for a big game in the series, and that's another concern. If I'm a Celtics fan right now, I think the Knicks have a game in them in this series. I thought they had a game in them before the series started, where they're clearly going to be the better team and they're clearly going to win. We haven't had that game yet, so that there's your margin for error if you're the Celtics right now. But what the Knicks have done has been amazing. That said, I said after game one, man, the Knicks have to be better. They cannot give the Celtics another 20, 25 open threes. They did it anyway and still won the game. Obviously, despite, as I pointed out, and then Knicks Muse picked this up, which dragged my social media into a whole new world today, which is that the Knicks have played 90 games this year. Their offensive rating in game 2 was 90th. Out of 90. It was their worst offensive game of the year, and they won.
Do you feel like, so I mean, that's all just, it's examples of why there is still a belief on the part of Celtics fans. Again, looking at how miserably the Celtics have played offensively, the sloppy turnovers, the missed threes, the whatever, over these first 2 games, to where they could, you said it, pick a 3 from the first game, pick a 3 from the second game. They could very easily be up 2-0 in this series. And really, it just feels like at worst, it should be 1-1. It's almost unthinkable that it's 0-2 right now. But all of that said, there's no bigger conversation surrounding how this has played out from a Celtic standpoint so far than around, obviously, the offensive approach. And in game 1, they take 63s. They miss 45 of them. NBA tracking data tells you that on the open/wide open threes, 25% is what they shot on those. So, they did to a degree, to a large degree, larger than I think people would acknowledge, change their approach in game 2. They only took 43s versus 60. That's a gigantic
detriment. To their detriment.
Yeah, once again, they shoot 25%. But where you say to their detriment, what I think you're acknowledging is they looked clunky. They looked out of sorts. They looked unsure of what they should be doing. They looked sloppy. They were obviously fumbling the ball all over the place. And so, at this point, like, people want them, all the griping, at least locally, it's, you got to evolve. You got to change what you're doing. You changed the way you played against Orlando. You got to do it now against New York. What I would say to that, Sean, and I'm sort of getting rolled for this by friends in the group chat kind of thing, but you got to kind of do what got you here to a certain degree. And if the Knicks are going to continue to dare you to shoot and give you as many open looks as you're getting, I think you just need to trust your shooters. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't times to attack the rim. Of course there are. And maybe they do pass on those on occasion when they shouldn't. But in a larger general sense, Boston should be taking 53-pointers in this game 3. And assuming that Tatum, White, Pritchard, Horford, you name it, like, these things are just going to start to fall. I refuse to believe that a team that shot as well as it did during the regular season all of a sudden can't hit the water out of a boat now in the playoffs. I just don't see it. But do you see it differently?
No, I don't. I agree they have to play the way they play. My only, the asterisk on that to me is the time and score element of if you get up by 20. You got to start playing time and score a little bit. And here's a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. We know, let's get a little wonky, because if you're listening this far in a podcast, you probably have some element. You have some appetite for the wonk. So let's get into it. Let's say an open 3 is worth 1.3 points. And driving to the basket in that situation is 1.2 or 1.1, whatever it is. You get the point. It's slightly better. This is what works over 82 games and 100 possessions a game over 82 games. The math, like a casino, is going to beat you down. There's a reason the buildings, they have these big giant buildings in Las Vegas, because the house always wins. The Celtics have been the house. with their approach here statistically. Now that you're in a short series, you have to think about the following. If you're up by 20 or you're up by 16 with 7 minutes to go, which, by the way, that to me is a much bigger lead than being up by 20 with 15 minutes to go and up 16 with 7 minutes to go. That's a different animal, as much as I went after that late third quarter, situation. There comes a point, Tatum has the open three in the corner. The same one he missed, by the way, in Denver last year. Remember that game in Denver? The Celtics had a national TV game in Denver. They lost. Tatum had that same shot, and he missed it. Analytics say, shoot the open three. It's worth whatever it's worth. You've got the lead. It's the fourth quarter. If you drive in that situation, first of all, in that particular one, you're getting to the rim. Jason Tatum, you're driving baseline. You're getting to the rim. You're getting fouled. It's a dunk. It's something. At some point, particularly if you're playing time and score, the 1.2 to me is preferable than the 1.3. The opportunity for fouls, because the 1.3 isn't 1.3. It's either 3 or 0. And at this point, whereas the 1.2, you're more likely to get 1 out of it. And at that point in the game, you need the 1. And that is my own. I'm struggling. They say the toughest thing in sports is for a Super Bowl coach to go into the locker room losing at halftime and say, well, we got to change everything that we did to get us here to the Super Bowl. You can't. And it's not a matter of if it's live by the 3, die by the 3, if you want to oversimplify it. The narrative has become, well, the Celtics just come down, and the people that aren't watching, they're not supposed to watch every game like we watch every game. The Celtics just come down and chuck threes. Well, of course that's going to go badly if that's what you do. Where are the paint touches? Where's the driving and kicking? Mitchell Robinson has played a big part in that. Again, not having Porzingis here. Now, what's worse? You have to ask yourself this question at some point. This Space Jam shell of a Porzingis, is it better not having him or better getting those minutes? And what game 2 was odd because the first shift he had in game 2, you're like, this isn't working at all. And then the second shift he had in game 2 gave you hope for him being able to contribute. But there's all these little things about that. I asked Joe about that before game 2. Is it all the times you didn't have Porzingis, and what's the Celtics record without him? 61-16 the last 2 years when they haven't had him. It's amazing. But there's a difference between not having a key piece 2 days before the game and planning for it, and all of a sudden in the middle of the game, that guy goes out. Because is Luke Cornett using all his fouls on Mitchell Robinson? If you don't think you're going to have Porzingis in the second half in game 1, maybe. But these are the little things. This team was not built. Al Horford's been amazing. We've documented it here how many times. Al Horford was not supposed to be playing 38 minutes against Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs. That was not the plan.
Let's take a quick break, tell you about our good friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Let me say that again. 1,000 times your cash, my goodness. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks.
We talk about flex play in here all the time, Kaufman. It has saved me, and since I got back from vacation, I took some time to recalibrate the PrizePick gears, and so we're diving back in here in round 2, and flex play has saved my ass more times than I can count right now. It is how I routinely continue to stack win after win after win. What does flex play mean? If you pick 3 particular stats and you hit 2 of them, you're still going to make money, right? Nobody's offering that. So with that in mind, with the flex play in mind, we're going to do for the Friday, Saturday circuit, we're going to do Siakam less than 18.5 points against the Cavaliers.
Okay.
Jokic more than 28.5 points against the Thunder. And Tatum, I think, gets back on track after hearing all this BS in the media throughout the week. Tatum more than 27.5 points against the Knicks. So if you play flex play like I do, and you hit all 3, you'll get 2.5 times your money. If you hit 2 out of 3, it's only 1 1/4, so 1.25x your money. So you're still making money, and getting your money, Kaufman, could not be easier. In a little as 15 minutes, you can watch the money roll into your account. Heck, use Venmo if you want the fastest payouts humanly possible, and that's all thanks to our buddies over at PrizePicks.
So download the app today. Use the code. It is CLNS. Get $50 instantly after playing your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the PrizePicks app. Use the promo code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after playing your first lineup for only $5. PrizePicks. Run your game. Now let's keep going with this conversation because I think at a very, like, this is sort of inside the weeds, if you will, inside baseball, whatever, when it comes to, watching these games. But, we're talking so much of the conversation, again, nationally, locally, whatever, involving this series has been about Boston's propensity to take the three and hey, they're missing all these wide open shots and all of that. We're in agreement, we just talked about it, that we don't think the approach necessarily needs to change. Maybe even emphatically it shouldn't change. But what about the road to getting there? Meaning, and you just kind of alluded to this, but I want to expand upon it. Should there be, like, if we qualify this as an adjustment Missoula could make, if you will, should there be an emphasis on more ball movement and on, just touches, right? Like you talked about, how many paint touches and all of that, and driving kicks and all of that. There's a difference between, even if it's a good shot, even if it's a wide open look, there just is a fundamental difference between hoisting a three with 18 on the shot clock versus doing it with 6 on the shot clock. Should Boston be looking to create some different chances than it has been so far in this series?
For all the criticism of Jason Tatum, my little soundbite, because, we all have to practice to get aggregated. Here's my soundbite. Jason Tatum doesn't need to make more shots. He needs to make more plays. Celtics don't need to make more shots. They need to make more plays. And then the shots will fall, and then the offense will become more efficient. The worst coaching job in history, the worst coaching advice ever came from Norman Dale when he said, we have to pass 5 times before we shoot. Well, what if you're under the basket all alone? What do you shoot? It's terrible advice. There's no such thing as just pass more. Just make your shots. Just stop shooting threes. Just stop. You gotta read. And by the way, full credit here for the Knicks coaching staff and Tom Thibodeau and our guy Darren Erman and everybody. The Knicks' base defense is completely different from the defense they've played all year. And they've been really good. Obviously not, they've dared the Celtics to shoot the open threes and they missed them, which brings us to really the other point here, which is that the mathematics say one thing, but let's talk about the expression on faces and real life and psychology and guys getting rattled. And when the thing isn't working, listen, we can't sit here and pretend the Celtics are robots here who are not affected by the situation. They've been affected by it, clearly. This fourth quarter stuff. By the way, the Celtics, I haven't tweeted this one out yet. The Celtics weren't a good clutch team in the regular season. They were an elite clutch team in the regular season. Just as I said, they didn't blow leads either. The Celtics were basically top 5 in everything. They were the top. They had the best winning percentage in the league in clutch games. Let me say it again. The best winning percentage in the league in clutch games. They were an amazing clutch team. And people said, well, they don't do this. They don't do it. Yeah, because you're all flash. The Celtics have played so many big games and so many playoff games. You're flashing back to games that got away from them. I remind you, as the Celtics are approaching, obviously they could win 4 straight. Of course, it could happen. I don't expect that it will, but it could. But they're probably going to be facing an elimination game or 2 here at some point. Reminder that the Celtics' last 10 elimination games, they won 8 of them. They're 8-2. That team, before last year, won 8 elimination games. And by the way, in their last 5 elimination games on the road, where it certainly appears they could face one here, if not Monday night, Friday in the game 6, the Celtics have won 5 consecutive games on the road facing elimination. That just doesn't, and if that's not some sort of clutch toughness gene, I don't know what is. I know in addition to the anger, there's this feeling of that Celtics fans can't speak their heart out loud, that there's elements of this Knicks team that they love, right? Who doesn't love Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson or whatever? You hate them because they're going against your team, but these are, amazing, fun clutch players that you would root for in any other circumstance. And the Celtics fans who've seen so much of that, even though they don't acknowledge it, from their team the last few years, just need to see some of that. And that's what we've seen on the road from them. They have been able to sort of, gather it together on the road where you just don't feel that margin is there, even though the Celtics have won all the margins here. They've won the rebounding, they've won everything. And it's just that the machine has not worked, and it's spit out 2 clunkers, 2 of these, what do we say? The fears that said these aberrational shooting games. And here they'd come back to back, and you're in an unfathomable 0-2 hole. It defies literally everything we know.
Yeah, the history stuff is what, for me, is kind of important at this point with these guys, particularly, again, this core group of guys. You want to talk about continuity being a good thing, like having the same group that's gone through all of the same problems together is I think, a positive here. This is a team that's, Grande, if Jalen were to make it back, as we were talking pre-show, it would be Jalen's 7th Eastern Conference Finals in his career, which is just an insane stat.
In 9 years. And can you imagine, like, behind me out there, if you just listen really close, you can feel the hunger for a fan base that is starving for a meal that Celtic fans are starting to turn their nose up at because we only want a championship and we want to go to the NBA Finals. In this time that Jalen Brown has been to 6 and, has a chance to get to the 7th if they can pull this series off. Cedric Maxwell and I have been together for 23 years, as everybody knows. We've gotten to call 10 conference finals. Meanwhile, behind me, less than a mile away at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks have been to a grand total of 0 in that time. The hunger for it here is just, and again, you get spoiled. It's the nature of it. But this is why it's going to cost you. I think right now it's between $800 or $900 just to get into the building Saturday afternoon. And by the way, flash forward here. Envision, if you will, the Knicks being up. I mean, obviously, if they win Saturday, you're up 3-0. That's going to be insane Monday. But let's say there's a more realistic 3-2. And there's a game 6 here on Friday night. Can you even, and with the Knicks up, can you imagine what that environment is going to be like? And just one more for the aggregate, one more for your files. Because I think I've said this. I said this out loud 2 years ago. I don't think in all the media I've been doing the last couple of days, including I got to be on with Chris Russo, man, which for, a kid growing up here, it's like, when certain people say your name, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool to hear it coming out of that voice. So, and here, I don't know what's going to happen Saturday. And I know if the Celtics lose on Saturday, I know what the narrative is going to be for the 2 days that follow. But let me just say the following thing. No team in NBA history has come from 0-3 down to win. But it's going to happen one day because everything that's never happened one day happens. So one day a team will come from 3-0 down to win. We know this is possible because we almost saw it happen 2 years ago. When it happens, how will it happen? What will the circumstances be? It will be a team that most people consider to be better than the other. It will be a team that had some flukish things happen early in the series. Maybe a key player was injured or unavailable, and that changes as the series goes on. That team will have game 5 and 7 at home when it happens, and that team will be a really good road team in an era in which home court advantage is dwindling seemingly by the day. So I'm not sitting here saying anything is going to happen. Maybe it's simply a preview of what I will be saying on the postgame if things don't go well for the Celtics in game 3. That I refuse. Everyone's game 1's a must win for this team. Game 2's a must win. Game 3's a must win. I'm done with that nonsense. I'm done with those hot takes because a must win is when you're facing elimination in this day and age of the NBA, because we have seen more crazy things happen in the last 2 days that the Celtics are one open shot away in each game from being up 2-0. The Denver Nuggets are 1-1 right now, and they just lost by 80. So we've seen everything there that you can possibly see here in these last couple of days, and I have done guessing and doing hot take stuff and just enjoying this extraordinary test. If Joe Mazzulla wanted the bullseye between his eyes, then you have wished it into reality for tomorrow. And you could not have invented a better challenge for the Celtics. And, it's just so I'm trying to avoid the word legacy, like you're playing hangman. Like, just don't say that word out loud because it's so ridiculous. Like Larry Bird's legacy, they got swept and embarrassed in '83 by the Bucks. How's Larry's legacy doing? Maybe this is '83. The specter, the new one creeping in now is that the Celtics said the fact that the team's going to be broken up, which we all know is going to happen in the next year or two, that now that is weighing on their mind. It's not. That's not what's going on here. Just everything that was working for them has stopped working. And it happens at times, and you got to find it. And I have been with this team when they were down 3-2 going into Milwaukee. I've been with this team when they were down 3-2 going into Philadelphia. I was with this team when they were down 3-0 going to Miami a couple of years ago, and I saw them respond. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Well, I'll pile on with the math too. I mentioned the 4-24 record for teams that dropped the first two at home in a best of 7.
Yeah, but Rondo, man.
But it's like you talk about like what happens if you go down 3-0. It's bigger than that, honestly. If you break down that 4-24, the only 4 teams that have come back to win have won both games 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So even if Boston were to go down 3-1, split in New York, go back home, history would tell you again that series is over. Now again, that's history, like you said. Something is going to change, be it this year or in the years to come. No baseball team had overcome, a 3-0 deficit before the Red Sox in 2004 against the Yankees. And it's not happened since. Things do happen that are beyond explanation, beyond imagination. But obviously, these are 2 immensely important games coming up in New York. You don't need me to tell you that. Where I want to go next here quickly is...
before I let you go there, to take 5 seconds to ponder this. Knicks win Saturday, go up 3-0. And then the Celtics win the next 2. The pressure on the Knicks going into it, the pressure shift. Can you imagine if the Knicks, after 25 years of not getting to the conference finals, took a 3-0 lead in this series, and then it started to get away from them, and they were facing the specter of a Game 7? And can you imagine what it was going to like? So this is why I'm saying, sit back and enjoy the theater, because I'm not sure it's even peaked yet. I'm not sure.
Well, Sean, I've mentioned this in a couple of places. I think I even tweeted it out. One of my best friends, who is a diehard Knicks fan, texted me before the series started, and he said, if we were somehow up 3-0 in this series and up by 20 points going into the fourth quarter of Game 4, I still would not believe that New York is going to win this series. That's the mentality of a Knicks fan. So
here's something nobody wants to hear in Boston. It is the Yankees and the Red Sox, but the Celtics are the Yankees. That's what's happening here right now. So you're expecting the roof to cave. If you're Knicks fans right now, of course you should be enjoying and loving every single second.
Oh, you're just fearing the worst.
The second this thing turns, there's going to be that.
How's it going to fall apart?
I grew up here as a Ranger fan. You're expecting it to, I grew up as a Ranger fan who everybody was chanting 1940 at when it had been 30 or 40. It's been 52 years since the Knicks won the championship, and calamitous things happen. And when you're just like you're feeling miserable as a Celtic fan right now today, this is the one thing. It's the only thing that Max has ever accepted of mine. He goes, I love that, and I'm stealing it, and I'm living my life by it. This is as true in basketball and in sports as it is in life. When you are losing, it feels like you will never win again. And when you are winning, it feels like you will never lose again. Mm-hmm. That's not how basketball, sports, or life works. Eventually, things turn.
So we are very much as a show, collectively, we are pro Joe Mazzulla around here. We scoff at a lot of the disdain that he receives. There are a lot of people, despite winning a championship, despite the, historic numbers he has put up in his short tenure as Celtics head coach, that believe that this is just not the right dude, and still longing for man, what kind of shape would Ime Udoka have Boston in this series right now? I've heard it all. But if we were to acknowledge the other side, just given where we are in this series, I saw someone tweet out the other day, I think it was Nick Cattles, and I thought it was an interesting talking point. He said, year 1 under Joe, we remember people were very critical over late game timeouts or, execution, or I'm trying to remember what else he brought up, just in-game strategy, what have you. Then last year, obviously they win the championship. You have Jeff Van Gundy on the bench. You have Charles Lee on the bench. None of that's an issue. It couldn't have gone smoother. This year, those two guys are gone. You lose a lot of experience on that bench, and suddenly some of these issues pop up again. Is Joe? I'm not. Should Joe be the guy? That's not this. But does Joe, I don't know, need some more veteran presence on that bench, or are we just grasping at straws when things don't go well?
Well, the fact that nobody said a word of this until yesterday is probably a pretty good idea there. Is grasping for straws. It's a fair, if anything, it's a fair question if you're asking it after game 31 when they're 21-5.
Sure.
Every question is fair. Every exploration is fair. But why are people having the discussion and when are you having it? I always thought a significant part of 2 years ago was there were two things that happened. Damon Stoudemire left, in the middle, like late in the year. Damon Stoudemire just leaves to take the Georgia Tech job. And then there was a part where the Celtics won the first two games in the playoffs in 2023. And then after that, it was really an up and down struggle the rest of the way. What happened after game 2 when they were up 2-0 against Atlanta? Ime got the Houston job. And suddenly it's just human nature. There were guys on the bench who, had gone through that whole turmoil and you didn't know, are they going to go with Ime? Are they going to stay? There's, where are my kids going to be in school? There's a general, nature to all of that. I don't think that stuff exists. If your feeling today is, boy, I just don't believe in Joe Mazzulla. If your feeling was that when he was winning 64 games, walking backwards into the championship and got this team off to a 21-5 start, and they were even better in the final third of the year than they were, if that was your feeling during the whole time, okay, you're entitled to say it today. If you're saying it today because you're just so angry that you're down 2-0 to New York, well, it's your job as a fan. Here's the only, as I said, I love hot take theater. Here's one I'm at my limit with now. The notion that somehow this affect last year's championship. That last year's championship somehow is degraded or downgraded if the Celtics don't win the championship here, if they lose like all the other champions last year.
I've heard a lot of people cite last year's path lately.
And here's the absurdity of it, and I'll say it for the 1,000th time. The Celtics were going to win the championship last year, no matter who was in front of them, who they played, and who was healthy. Would they have gone 16-3? Maybe not. They might have gone 16-6, but they would have gotten the 16. It was going to happen last year, no matter what. If the second best horse in the 1973 Belmont might have been a little bit hurt, okay, Secretariat might have only won by 16 lengths instead of 20. Stop with the nonsense. Stop with the Tatum legacy. Stop with last year's championship. Jason Tatum's going to the Hall of Fame. He's going to move into 4th on the Celtics all-time scoring list in the playoffs. 4th. He's 27. Not to mention that whole legacy conversation is ridiculous anyway, considering he's barely, not even at the halfway point of his career, most likely.
Right.
Barring an injury. So all that's absurd, but there's a lot of shows that have a lot of time to fill, and I get all of it. You're playing on the passion, and there'll never be more passion than you're going to get in a Boston, New York series. But you got to stop with all that. Jason Tatum's had 2 bad games. By the way, he was not only the best player on the Celtics in the first round, he could have been the best player. You can make a case he was the best player in the league in the first round of the playoffs. And you can't, because he had 2 bad games, you can't pretend he wasn't the 3rd or arguably 4th best player in the NBA this year. Well, I heard people say, well, he's a top 10 player. No, he's not a top 10 player. He's had 2 bad games. And if he has 4 bad games and the Celtics get swept, it'll be fair to say, man, Jason Tatum had a really bad week in his Hall of Fame career. Fair.
Yeah, there's a lot of blame will be thrown, but a lot of it will be thrown at Tatum. And I thought he's handled it pretty well. One of the things that, he's taken accountability. Like, I haven't played well. Like and even like not playing well, he's still grabbing like 14 rebounds a game. It's not like he's not impacting the way the game is going. It's just he's not shooting. Like, that's the one thing I don't get. People can't separate shooting the ball well from playing well.
Yep.
And this is what gets lost in my conversations with basketball fans of any kind around the league is if you don't shoot the ball well, it's impossible for you to have a good game. Well, I'm like, well, he's still playing defense. He's still grabbing
like a machine.
He's grabbing almost every defensive rebound. He's grabbing like all of them. He's the distribution stuff that it's a little bit two-edged sword because, in order for you to get an assist, the other guy has to make the shot. So it's kind of like, well, it's a good play, but he doesn't make it, doesn't get credit for it. He's still impacting the basketball game. And that's the one thing that gets me so angry about people where it's like, oh, Jalen Brunson had this amazing, little run in the fourth quarter. I'm like, well, he wasn't that awesome the entire game. He was 6 of 19.
Holiday's been great. By the way, that's another concern. Brunson hasn't had that big game yet. But then again, Brunson had big games against the Celtics this year, but the Knicks lost. So who cares if Towns could have a 40 in him here? It's do the Knicks collectively have a better game in them? I think they probably do. And I think they're going to get another game in the series at least. If the Celtics, I think, are going to have to. This is going to be 7 if the Celtics do win the series. And by the way, that's hard to imagine even that environment. If you have a 6th game here and a 7th game in Boston would be just so delicious. It should be fattening. Like, I don't even want to fantasize it into reality. But
it would add on to what has been an unbelievable playoffs through 2, not even full 2 rounds yet. I mean, you talk to anybody, what I don't hear a lot of right now, Sean? A lot about the NBA ratings right now. I don't hear anything about that. All I'm hearing about from all walks of life, people that just watch basketball, like, man, I can't wait for the next game. When's the next game? Who's playing tonight? Oh, is it Cavs Pacers tonight? Yeah, I'm watching that. I'm staying up for Denver, Oklahoma City, because who knows what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I was out. This is going to sound like a name drop. There's a reason I'm doing it because of. So I'm out at dinner. What was the night we had off? Tuesday night in between the games. And it's me, my wife, my son, Kevin Harlan, Allie LaForce, Brian Windhorst. That's our group. I don't think anybody, when we walked in there, thought we would be the loudest group in the restaurant. But when Halliburton hit that shot, just to pop at our table, and then everybody else sort of being into the game, in this restaurant in the North End, it was, of course, people were into it. Of course, that narrative was ridiculous early in the year. And by the way, caught up in the trope of TV ratings. TV, what's TV? My son's 13. You think he's going to know what TV is? I mean, people have to. This is insane. Like, people don't understand. Expansion's being held up because models are based on the old local TV models. Local TV in the NBA, as we've discussed here many times, is going away. Everything is going to change. You think my son's going to know what cable television was? No. So the metrics by which I try to, we probably had this conversation before. I'm trying to remember the last time as the voice of the Celtics, I looked into a building and saw an empty seat. What? The league's in trouble. The league is hurting. The league is trending downwards. By what possible metric? By television ratings? Or how are they doing on Betamax purchases? Things like that. You got to realize how quickly things are changing. It's our job to deliver the product to viewers, to listeners in every possible way. As you guys know, there's a camera on me and Max now all the time. That's the way of it. People are watching YouTube clips and whatever, and I'm not sitting here, this isn't like the old days. We have to find you. Our job is to perform for you. Our job is to deliver the game to you, wherever you want it and however you want to consume it. And that is changing awfully fast. So and that's why, by the way, the reason there's hot take theater is because there's a huge appetite for hot take theater, and a lot of dudes who are friends of mine making a lot of money, doing it. As I said, I wish I could have bet. You have all your betting stuff you do. If there had been an app somewhere where you could have bet 20 years ago on Kendrick Perkins becoming one of the faces and voices of the NBA, it would have been like $1 billion to 1. I would have been, that'll never happen. I wouldn't bet $1 $1 billion to 1.
If I'm not mistaken, this show, Celtics Beat, was the very first media interview, post-retirement, that Perk did before he, embarked upon a full-on media career. So, we are
at the end of the day, Kaufman.
I don't think we're partly responsible, but we were in the early.
Say you were there. Sounded a little bit like you were trying to.
We were there. We were there at the beginning, is all I'm saying. I'm not.
I will give Perk credit. He has gotten rid of that crutch of he used to say every answer that Kaufman and I asked him or a question he would come up with at the end of the day as his crutch, and I haven't heard him say that in a long time. So I'm gonna give him.
He works for people now that. Yeah, he works for people now that are professionals that fixed all that stuff, and he's doing what you wind him up and you let him go, and he's been great. And
he's not walking 20 miles in a robe though to work, like Pierce just said.
Not doing 33,000 steps.
How about KG driving by? KG, if you haven't seen that video yet, KG drove by Paul as he was walking.
I didn't out of the car. Video, but that's amazing.
You gotta find it. I tweeted out overnight, but it's
Those two guys are so good. Those two guys. That's the type of media I like. That's their stuff.
When I saw Paul, I forget where it was. He's America's guest. He's been in a lot of our games. It might have been in LA. And when I got to see him and catch up, and I told him my favorite piece of content, we don't say TV anymore, my favorite piece of content that has crossed my radar in the last year that brings me unmitigated joy is Paul showing Kevin Edwin Diaz's walkout the closer of the Mets.
Yeah.
KG showing it to Paul. KG's you've got listen, and trust me when I tell you, if you're a Celtics fan that is down today and you're upset and you're go find Kevin Garnett showing Paul Pierce the Edwin Diaz walkout, and you'll find your joy. It's like if you're someone that watches like dog videos all day and whatever, this will do the same. This will bring you the same joy that does. It is my favorite piece of content I have. It's not safe for work, kids.
Yeah.
And kids, you might hear some words in there that you don't want to be using, but nevertheless, it is pure joy.
That one is incredible. I'll give you another that people should look up, and I wish I could like fully quote it, or I'd be very quickly canceled. But the I've shown it to Ev for sure, but there is a clip of the two of them, Pierce and KG, talking about Dean Wade of the Cavaliers, and
yes, it's so good.
And
so good.
And KG just talking about his name is worth the price of admission. It's
a new hot take is, man, these guys, they're not the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett Celtics. This team, I'm like, yeah, this team's been better.
Yeah,
been significantly better. That team won a championship with a iconic season. This team won a championship with an iconic season. And look at the years surrounding it. Like, this team has been better. They have outperformed the new Big Three Celtics. Now, granted, that team didn't start, as I've said 100 times, including in Celtic City. The clock was ticking the second it started. They were all 30. They were 30, 31, and 32 when it started. And obviously, Jalen and Jason are still a few years away from getting to that starting point. So who knows, what lies ahead and what the 2028 Celtics are going to look like here,
right?
With the tax rules and all the other stuff as the league prepares to break up, this particular run. But that team we reminisce about it fondly, because the same way we're going to reminisce, by the way, about Jason Tatum in Milwaukee in Game 6 and Philadelphia in Game 6, when the next guy, wherever the next guy is 10 years from now, the next great Celtic, when he has a bad playoff game, they're going to say that never happened to Jason Tatum. When right now in real time, where Jason Tatum is the worst player in the history of players. So
never had a moment, not in his entire life.
It goes. By the way, Carmelo Anthony not only has become this, popular guy again, he's going to be part of the NBA coverage next year, and he's obviously a Hall of Famer. In real time, people are killing. If you said, let's say this with Mike Gorman, we had this argument all the time. I'm like, Carmelo's a Hall of Famer, and Mike could be like, Carmelo Anthony, no, he's no good. He's not. People just don't.
Yeah,
they don't want to accept what's happening in real time, and that's the only thing. As much as hot take theater is fun, if you can't enjoy it, we're going to be talking about what happens probably this weekend, and maybe the rest of the series. If we get, knock on wood, the 6 or 7 game series that we all hope it's going to be, we're going to be talking about this for decades. Things that are about to happen that we're going to remember forever. So, lean into that a little bit. I know it's 21 hours of a lot of noise every day until the games start, but let's try to enjoy the idea that your team is so relevant. The Boston Celtics are so relevant that the world is losing its mind that they lost 2 games. Because I've been here for some years when the Celtics lost 2 games and it was crickets.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would notice. Nobody notices a thing. But when you've been the best team in the league for the last 4 or 5 years, or have the best record over the last 10 years or whatever it is, I get it. Standard is super high. This is what comes with it, but it's better than the alternative, where you have a team that hasn't been at the conference finals here in 25 years. Minnesota, as we said, has just got there for the second time in their franchise history. Oh, that's a new team. It's an expansion team. No, it's not. They've been around for almost 40 years, and that's how old we all are. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves came in the 80s, and they've been twice to the conference finals. And how many teams? The Celtics, I was there. I called it when the Celtics lost to the Pistons in Game 4 in 2008, and the Pistons haven't won a playoff game at home since. 16 years later, they still, because they won 0-3 against the Knicks, they have not won a home playoff game since. So this isn't about, well, be grateful you're not the 28th best team in the league. Have a little appreciation for, you just, you want to say choked away. You just had 2 horrible losses. You know what? You can't have horrible losses until you get into games that really matter.
For those of you listening to the show, we ask you subscribe to the Celtics Beat podcast, leave a review. For those of you watching on the CLNS YouTube page, hit the like button, subscribe to Celtics All Access, the YouTube channel. Of course, you can find our show, lots of other great Celtics content, locker room content, you name it. Also, please make sure you turn on your notifications so that you know the instant new video drops. I'm with these guys. I think we are in for a long, fun series that is far from over, and hopefully one that we'll be able to, with our homer bias, preview another lackluster challenge in the Eastern Conference Finals on the way to returning to the NBA Finals. That's the conversation I'd like to have. But right now, Celtics, they got some work to do. For Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Sean, thank you so much. Sean Grande for hopping on with us once again. Should be a lot of fun. We'll be listening to the call.
Awesome, guys. Great to see you.
This has been Celtics Beat. On to next week.